Good evening, everyone. Again, apologize for the technical difficulties with the internet and shul. That's why the class is later. I'm doing it from home. So this week's parsha is Parshas Devarim, Tavshin Pei Gimel. We'll focus right now on Parak Aleph, Chapter 1, Pasuk Tes, verse 9. Moshe says to the Jewish people, "Vaymar aleichem b'yisach lemar," and I said to you at that time, saying, "Lo uchal labadi se'es eschem," I cannot carry you alone by myself. Hashem Elokeichem herbo eschem. Hashem your God has multiplied you. V'inechem hayom k'chvei hashmayim l'roi. Behold, today you are like the stars of the heaven in abundance. Hashem Elokei avoseichem Yosef aleichem kachem elef pa'amim. Hashem the God of your fathers shall add upon you 1,000 times more as you are now. Vivarech eschem, and bless you, kashadibar lachem, as he has spoken to you. Eicha esa levadi. Moshe says, how could I carry alone? Parachachem, your trouble, umasachem, your burden, v'rivchem, and your quarrels. Havu lachem anashim chachamim unavainim viduim l'shiftechem. Bring forth for you men that are wise, understanding, and well known to your tribes. Remember, I shall place them at your head. So this is where Moshe is reviewing with the Jewish people the establishment of the court system amongst the Jewish people. Originally, everybody came to Moshe for everything. Moshe, and in Parashas Yisro, we read how Yisro said to Moshe that this is too much for you and the people. And here Moshe is repeating that in the sense that Moshe is saying that all the burden, your burdens, your troubles, your quarrels, it's too much for you to do it alone. Bring forth people to be judges. Vatanu oisi, and you responded to me. Vatomru, and you said, Tova davar shedibarta la'asais. It is good the matter that you are speaking to do. V'akachas rosh hashev teichem, and I took the heads of your tribes. Anoshim chachamim v'duim, men that are wise and well known. V'ten oisim roshim aleichem, I made them as leaders over you. Sarei alofim, v'sarei meyois, leaders of 1,000, leaders of hundreds, v'sarei chamishim, leaders of 50, v'sarei asarais, leaders of tens, v'shoivim l'shavteichem, and officers for your tribes. The system basically was set up that for every 10 people there were judges, and then for every 50, for every 100, for every 1,000. It was a system where you started off with a judge for a smaller amount of people, and if necessary, you went to the bigger number. Now, and then the Torah talks about how Moshe then commanded the judges how to be judges. What I want to focus on, go back to Pasuk Yudi Beis. Eicha esa labadi. Moshe says, how can I carry on my own? The minig, the custom is that when this verse is going to be read in the Torah on Shabbos, that the Balkari, the reader, is going to switch the trup. He's going to switch the cantillation from Shabbos to the cantillation of the book of Eicha that we read on Tisha B'Av. And the book of Eicha starts with the word Eicha. And here we have the word Eicha. And therefore, at this point, we're going to switch over and read it with the Eicha tune, the Eicha trup. Eicha esa levadi parchachem u'masachem v'rivchem. Which means that there's some kind of connection between the Eicha here and the Eicha that we're going to read on Tisha B'Av. The Medrash points out that actually find 3 prophecies that begin with the word Eicha. We have 3 prophets. The way the Medrash says it is, Shloisha nisabu b'lashon Eicha. 3 people said prophecy with this expression of Eicha. Moshe, our Parsha, Yeshaya, the prophet Isaiah, the Yirmiyah, the prophet Jeremiah. Moshe Amar, Eicha esa levadi. Moshe said, how can I carry on my own? Yeshaya Amar, the prophet Yeshaya said, Eicha esa lezaina. Yeshaya was looking at the city of Yerushalayim, at the Jewish people, and said, Eicha esa lezaina. How did she become like a woman of ill repute? Yirmiyah Amar, Yirmiyah said, Eicha yashva badad. How does she sit alone and desolate? So we have 3 prophets using the same word. Amar Rabbi Levi, the sage Rabbi Levi, continued and said, Mashal Matrena, a parable to give some understanding to this. Lamatrena, a noble woman, a woman of importance. Shayila Shleisha Shushbinin. She had 3 assistants. Echad Ra'isa b'Shalvasa. One saw her in her tranquility, in a good state. Echad Ra'isa b'Pachazusa. One saw her in her state of unsettlement, in her unsettled state. Echad Ra'isa b'Nivula. And one saw her in her shame, in her degradation. Kach. Moshe Ra'a es Yisrael b'chvaydam b'Shalvasam v'Omar Eicha Salavadi Tarchachem. Moshe saw the Jewish people in their glory, in their tranquility, in a time where they were well established, about to enter the land of Israel. And he said, how can I carry your trouble alone? Yeshaya saw them in their unsettled state, in their sinful state. And he said, how did she become like a zona, like a woman of ill repute? Yeshaya was the prophet before the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. Yirmiyah, the prophet Yirmiyah, saw them in their degradation. And he said, how does she sit alone? The book of Yirmiyah is a prophecy from the prophet Jeremiah. There's the book of Yirmiyah, and Eicha was also from Yirmiyah. So we have these, so from the Medrash says, from the parable, we're going through different stages of this one woman's life. And that is what's happening here with the Jewish people. They're going through different stages. You've got Moshe's stage, Yeshaya's stage, and Yirmiyah's stage, which means there's a connection between them. What is that connection? So I saw an explanation from Rabbi Rizil Milevsky Zatzal, and he explains it in the following way. Let's analyze this whole story by Moshe. So Moshe says, how can I carry on my own? But we know that Moshe started off that way. Moshe started being the one judge alone. He did it all. And as Ramban points out, Nachmanides points out, Moshe did 3 things. He took care of teaching them Torah, he took care of praying for them, and he settled their disputes. Moshe started off doing it himself. And then there was a decision to change things into a broader judicial system. What was Moshe thinking to begin with, and what changed? So many commentaries point out that if you think about it, the right way to have done things, the best way to have done things was for Moshe to handle everything. What can be better than studying Torah from Moshe? What can be better than Moshe praying for you? What can be better than Moshe settling your dispute? And that's the way it was supposed to be. But Moshe noticed something. He noticed Tarchachem u'masachem rivchem. He noticed the behavior of the Jewish people. There was something missing. The fact that there was so much trouble that was coming from them meant that the point of the direct connection with Moshe wasn't working. The direct connection to Moshe was meant to give them that connection through Moshe to Hashem. And if they were really gaining from that connection and growing in their connection to Hashem, then there wouldn't be all these fights and all the disputes. You know, the Medrash, Sifri, when it explains Tarchachem u'masachem rivchem, Moshe says your trouble, your load, your quarrel. The Sifri says your trouble means that when 2 Jews were having a dispute and they were going in front of a judge, Moshe, and one saw that he was losing, he would start making trouble, but start making problems. Oh, I have another proof. I have more witnesses. That's Tarchachem. Masachem is the fact that Moshe knew, as the Medrash says, and there's more than one Medrash says this, the Jewish people talking behind his back. There were people amongst the Jewish people who even talked about Moshe. How come he left his tent early today? How come he left late? And you know, it's been around for many years, this kind of stuff. And then Rivcha means your contentiousness, you're fighting. Moshe saw the Jewish people if they were gaining from their connection to him, if they're gaining from the direct connection to him, then why is this all going on? There shouldn't be all these problems. There shouldn't be all these coming for disputes. If you're a people that are connected to Hashem, you want to grow your connection to Hashem, then these things shouldn't matter. Then you should be settling these things on your own. These things shouldn't matter. You shouldn't be talking about Moshe's back, that's for sure. And what's all the contentions? What's all the fighting? So Moshe is looking at the situation. It's clearly a difficult situation. It's clearly not an easy thing to do. And if it's not working, if it's not accomplishing what it needs to accomplish, then why do it? It really is something that wears everybody down. If it's not accomplishing, why do it? But Moshe realized at the same time what the Jewish people stand to lose without that direct connection from him. The potential is much greater. There's a tremendous potential for them to grow if they can utilize it right. So Moshe gives it one more shot. And Moshe does like this. He says to the Jewish people, how can I carry by myself your trouble, your burden, your contentiousness, your quarrels? Bring forth men, and we'll make them judges. What are the answer to Moshe? Tova davar. Good idea. Great idea. Let's go for it. So Rashi comments that when they did that, Moshe said to them that I see from the way you responded that the way that you responded was really for your own benefit. When you responded to me that it's good, I saw that you made a decision for your own personal benefit. You know what you should have responded when I gave this idea? You should have responded, Rabbeinu Moshe, our teacher Moshe. Mimina Alumbaid, who's the better to learn from? From you or from your student? Would it be better to learn from you because you worked so hard for it? But that's not what they said. I know what was deep down going on in your minds, and that is there'll be more judges. You know, they don't know who we are. Perhaps we're going to influence them in some way. Moshe says, I know that at the end of the day, you said it was a good idea because deep down, you didn't want you wanted the easier way out. You didn't want the way that by learning from me, you'd have greater responsibility. You wanted an easier way out. Now, so Milevsky explains like this. So Moshe Rabbeinu says to them, he didn't give the right reply. What Moshe was trying to do was, he was trying to give it one more shot. Let's see, one more shot. I'm going to suggest to the Jewish people, no more direct from me, we'll have judges. Let's see what they respond. If they respond, as Rashi says, we don't want to give up our connection with you. It's of course better to learn from you. So then Moshe would say to them, if that's what you want, then you need to be changing. If you really want to go ahead and continue studying from me and gaining from me, you've got to change your ways. You've got to stop the bickering. You've got to stop the pettiness. You've got to be more focused on growing closer to Hashem, and then it'll work. That's what Moshe was sending out. He was testing them to see how they would react. And they didn't react. They didn't react the way they should have. They said, great idea. And Moshe said, that showed me that you really were done. You didn't have the interest of connecting through Hashem, to Hashem through me. Your interest in growing closer to Hashem was not there. And it was too late. There was nothing more to do about it. And they set up the system of judges. What the Medrash means to say, when the Medrash says that there was a connection between the three things, the Medrash means to say like this. The Jewish people in the times of the prophet Yeshaya, the prophet Yirmiyah, they were falling. Yeshaya bemoans their spiritual state, their sinfulness. Yirmiyah has to bemoan their destruction. At that point already, it was also very clear that the Jewish people weren't interested in their connection to Hashem. Because if they did, they wouldn't have been sinning, and they wouldn't have been ignoring the fact that the prophets are saying you're going to lose it all. But they ignored it because they had their personal interests that they're putting ahead of everything. the lack of the desire to go closer to Hashem came to the point that this Beis Hamikdash had to be destroyed. It didn't happen then. It didn't start then. It started way back. It started in the times of Moshe, when the Jewish people said that we're not going to go. That when the Jewish people showed their lack of desire to grow through Moshe, and they didn't fix that, they didn't rectify that. That already laid the seeds for destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. We mentioned many times before a concept that our spiritual characteristics, our spiritual behaviors, who we are spiritually, in a positive sense, and maybe not in a positive sense, gets passed down to our generations. When the Jewish people came to the point that they sinned so much the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, it started back. It started first when they showed their lack of interest in growing closer to Hashem through Moshe and accepting judges. That was the beginning that eventually evolved into the Jewish people coming to the point of a lack of desire to grow close to Hashem, that they sinned to the point that Yeshaya bemoaned their fate, and that Yirmiyah would bemoan the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. So this is a brand new insight into the cause of the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. We know there were sins. There had to be specific sins in order for them to be liable to punishment. But there were root causes. And one of those root causes was the fact that the Jewish people did not desire to grow closer to Hashem, to rather have it more easy, to have life easier, instead of giving up from the tranquility and pleasure of life for the growth to become closer to Hashem. They weren't ready to do that. They were ready to grow. And that eventually evolved into such a lack of desire to grow closer to Hashem that they sinned, the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. Which means as we approach Tisha B'Av, that is coming next week, this week's parsha is telling us that there is a focus that we need to start having. That's a focus of wanting to grow closer to Hashem. A focus of our lives being oriented towards growth, not towards physical gratification, not towards having it easier, but rather towards growing closer and closer to Hashem. And the more we want to grow closer to Hashem, the more we're focused on that. There has to be a focus. It's something that a person has to constantly be reminding themselves. They have to constantly review it and bring it into their lives and think about it often, to be able to orient their lives in that direction as best as possible. And the more we orient ourselves towards growth to Hashem, the more we feel the loss of the Beis Hamikdash, because we know that's the greatest connection that we could have. So when we focus on growth, our desire for the Beis Hamikdash grows, and the more our desire for the Beis Hamikdash grows, to have it back and to have that growth and to be able to grow, the closer we come to Hashem bringing it back to us. That's an important idea that we need to keep in mind. Now I want to share with you another thought, and not related, but something that I found very, very interesting. So the book of Devarim, the fifth book of the Torah, is called Mishnah Torah. What does Mishnah Torah mean? So the most common explanation of Mishnah Torah means the repeat of the Torah, the review of the Torah. And the book of Devarim, in a very large part, is a review. It's a review of many of the episodes of the Torah, of the Jewish people in the desert. It's a review of many mitzvahs. There are mitzvahs mentioned in the book of Devarim that aren't mentioned before, but a good amount of them, maybe even most of them, are reviewed or repeated in the book of Devarim. So it's called Mishnah Torah. The commentary of Hamak Dover, the Netziv, Rav Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin, the last Rashi of the Balazhin Yeshiva, he explains it differently. And from his commentary, I take out 2 points. So the first thing is he explains Mishnah Torah from the word l'shanein, to be sharp. In Shema we say v'shinantam levanecha, which we translate as I shall teach them to your children. but it means more. The word vishinantam, it doesn't say vilimadatam, you shall teach, it's vishinantam. And the Talmud explains that the word vishinantam comes from the word shinun, mishanein, to be sharp. A person has to be sharp in Torah. A person has to strive to understand Torah and to have a good understanding of Torah, to have a deep understanding of Torah. And the only way to have that broad, deep understanding of Torah is if you are amel b'Torah. You toil in the study of Torah. And according to how much you toil, that's how sharp you get. And then Netziv says, and he doesn't explain it, this is part of his introduction to the book of Devarim, but he says that he does mention this throughout his commentary on Devarim, that the theme of Moshe's final message to the Jewish people, what he was exhorting them towards was Amal B'Torah, to accept, to toil in Torah. Because if you toil in Torah, you will then get to the Mishnah Torah, to the sharp and clear and broad, deep understanding of the Torah. That's the message of Moshe to the Jewish people. The message of Moshe to the Jewish people as they're entering the land of Israel is you need to accept upon yourselves to have Mishnah Torah, to have a sharp understanding of the Torah. And the only way that can happen is if you toil in Torah. And he says throughout his commentary, he points this out. He doesn't give examples here, but that's what he says. And it's a fascinating idea, fascinating interpretation of Mishnah Torah. And then he goes further and he says that we find in a Medrash that the book of Devarim, excuse me, let me just find it. Yeah. The Medrash says that the book of Devarim, the fifth book of the Torah, Sefer Mishnah Torah, was a banner to Yoshua. When Hashem revealed himself to Yoshua, Joshua, Moshe's successor, Moitze Yoshev, he found Yoshua sitting, the Sefer Mishnah Torah b'yadai, and the book of Devarim in his hand. Why the book of Devarim more than any other of the books of the Torah? And he says, because we learned from here, Lamadnu Zeh Sefer b'yichud yesh lahaitzi mimenu kol oifane musar. I'll read you an English translation of that. We learn from this Medrash that one can derive the entire gamut of ethical principles from this book in particular. The book in particular is the book to learn Kol Oyfane Hamusar, the entire gamut of ethical principles. We would say, if we would be asked the question, which book has the most ethical principles? I don't know. Drasha is Shmos. Says in Netziv, Devarim. Devarim has it. And that's why Yoshua had it in his hand. That was Yoshua's guide. That was his guide to how to live his life, how to live as a leader. We find, says the Netziv, this is later on in Parsha Shoftim, that the king of the Jewish people has a mitzvah. Torah says, "V'kasav lo es Mishnah HaTorah." He's going to write for himself this Mishnah Torah, which means this book of Devarim. Now, we understand that the mitzvah of the king is not just to write one scroll of the book of Devarim. He has to write the whole Torah. But the point of stressing Mishnah Torah is he has to write the whole Torah. Mishnah HaTorah. The point for the king is the book of Devarim. Sheyabed HaMelech B'Tamid, the Melech should constantly look at it in order to get to the goal. The Torah states why you should have it, which is Aman Yilmad Le'yira, Lishmar, Levilti Levavai, Levilti Sermon Mitzvah. He shall learn to fear, to guard, not to become haughty, not to stray. That's what the book of Devarim does. And that's why Yeshua had it. And the Netziv writes, and I'm going to read from this English translation, one can infer from all the above that anyone who properly investigates the words of ethics in this book that emanated from the mouth of Moshe with the divine spirit will find, according to his character, meaning his mental and spiritual character, milk and honey, insights pleasant as milk and honey. That means, again, we're finding by the king, we're finding by Yoshua, Moshe and Yeshua may have not had the full status of a Jewish king, but they practically were. And they followed this idea. Have the book of Devarim in hand, because it has the gamut of the teachings of Musar, of the ethical imperatives that the Torah wants from us. It says the Netziv, and it's not just reserved for the king. Anybody who strives to investigate the words of Devarim and how to live their life properly, anybody, and who will be able and will do so according to who they are, according to their character, according to their abilities, they will, whoever they are, according to whatever their character may be, they will find milk and honey. They will find insights as sweet and pleasant as milk and honey. That's the book of Devarim. The book of Devarim is unique more than the other books to study Kol Eifane Musar, all the ethical principles Torah wants us to have in order to live a proper life. That's what the king needs. That's what the king has to have with him. He has a mitzvah to have it with him. And we, according to wherever we are, can gain those beautiful insights from the book of Devarim too. Have a wonderful Shabbos.